Okay, it is exactly 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October the 23rd, 2019, and welcome to week number 4 of Introduction to Corrections. And I'm Professor Richard Wright, and I'm going to take some time to go over the assignments for this week. You should be aware of the fact that this is the week that you do your second assignment for the course project, which the first one was week 2. That was when you select your agency and give your contact information. And some of you gave the agency, some of you gave improper agencies, and I gave you a chance to submit those. So now we're in week 2, so it has to be from this point to that you will complete your assignment with the proper agency. And it was already established from the beginning that the proper agency consists of a jail, a prison, a probation, or parole. Not just saying those, but what jail? Like, for example, in our situation here in Will County, the Will County Jail. The prison, the Illinois Department of Corrections, or the state. With the probation, Will County Department of Probation, or Probation Department. Will County Parole, or no, Illinois Parole Department. So parole is usually a state thing. It's not a county or a city thing. So you need to specifically provide that information, and it's very important. So let's move forward, and I'm going to share my screen. As you can see, this is information here that you are familiar with. So I'm going to scroll on down all the way to where you can see week 4 lecture. So remember, your lectures were week 1, week 2, and today week 4. Remember that lectures are even weeks now. So your next lecture will take place week 6, then 8, and then 10. Okay, so now let's go over and let's take a look at the announcement for this week. So in week 4, which is we're going to discuss jail and prison. We're going to talk about the difference between the two, and I provided to you the corresponding PowerPoint for sections 3 and 6 of the textbook, which are the sections that you're supposed to be reading for this week. And I'm going to go over the activity jail versus prison, and then I'm going to provide you with an interview regarding jail issues today. And we're not going to do a look inside the maximum security prison. We're going to conclude with that. And so we're going to conclude with that video with the interview regarding jail issues today. Your written assignment, your discussion assignment, issues facing jails. Your initial posts were due last night, the 22nd of October, by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and your reply posts are due this Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you know my position on posts, and if you have a post and it's not very detailed, you're not going to get points for them. And that's because if you look at the rubric, which we've discussed already. And then finally, the written assignment is your state prison classification and, as I said, the course project agency overview and background. Now, I'm going to go into that in detail so that you can be well aware of what you're expected to provide for especially the course project portion. All right. So, and then there's a mid-quarter student survey. If you could take the time to complete that, I would greatly appreciate that. And then you know what my motto is all about. So now let's take a look at tools, and let's see the course calendar. So you can see again when your assignments are due, as I've already shared. So you see, we're at live lecture. Your initial post was due Tuesday. Your reading assignment, click on that. There it is right there. And then your initial post, and it gives the topic, issues facing jail. And then your reply post, Saturday the 26th. And then the survey, student survey, we'd appreciate you do that. And then your written assignment that I will go into detail with, but it's your state prison classification, and it tells you what the requirements are. Remind you again that whenever you do your written assignment, papers through Grammarly, and then your course project, the requirements are in the rubric and in the module. So we're going to cover that in just a few minutes. That's why it's so important that students do pay attention to these lectures. I know that many of you, and you won't hear me say this, those of you who listen to the lectures will hear me say this, those of you who listen to the lectures are able to get more details and information to help you to complete your assignments than those who decide not to. And so as a result, because the lectures are not mandatory, my giving them is not mandatory, but this is my attempt to try to encourage students to recognize that I am a professor who goes way out of their way to help you and will provide details and information to the end that you will achieve student success. Okay, and then next week you have your assignments. I'm not going to go over them because they're already in the system, and if you have any questions, then you know how to reach out to me. And then we'll be back in week 6. And then during week 6, I usually will cover the next part of the course project, which will be due week 7. So now that's the course calendar, and then of course going ahead, you see that we're approaching November, and you see that the course will end on the 13th of December. That's the last day of class. All right. Now, one thing I want to make you aware of is that in the fact that we are starting week 4, which now I'm going to go into, click onto it. After we complete week 5, the week 5 assignments are due, and we start into week 6. I should say this. After we complete week 6, heading into week 7, I will not accept assignments from weeks 1 through 5 because we will have completed the midpoint. So let me make sure that you're clear. So assignments that are due week 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I will not accept after we complete week 6. I will not. So be aware of that fact. All right, and you're not going to know that unless you listen to the lecture. So, all right, so now let's look at the assignments for today. So I'm going to come back to that course project. I want to just talk about the written assignment. The written assignment is for you to research your prison, your Department of Corrections for your state, and the various types of services and overview of your facility. And, you know, you're going to write this in the form. It's going to be a brief overview, and you're going to see what the requirements are for the number of pages, which I'm almost sure is 1 for this. Yep, a minimum of 1 page. Double spaced. Okay, APA formatted with citations in the body and references at the end and with a cover page. And these are the requirements set forth for that. All right, so your state prison classification, and you're going to write about that. And don't just throw a gratuitous citation in the body. they should be throughout the paper itself. And that's due the 27th. All right. So you see that information right there. So now let's go back to the assignment. All right. And then you have your, which we talked about already. So now let's get to this. Now, I want you to notice, just because they're set up with bullet points, that is not how I want you to write your paper. I want you to write your paper providing these facts and information. Very important that you have. You search out the mission statement, and it would be very, very wise for you when you do, is to do it in, write your papers in paragraph form. And don't just jam everything together. Don't start talking about the information and then jump into another. There should be a separate paragraph. So it says here, it's time for you to present an overview of the agency that you've selected. And these are the types of agencies: jail, prison, probation, and parole. If you notice, probation and parole have the same requirements or details that we'd be looking for. Regardless of the agency you selected, there are common issues required: cost per day, population, demographics, employee demographics, and program services. Some of these agencies, you might not be able to get all of that information, but get as much as possibly you can. It's important to make sure that you not only provide the mission statement, but that you reflect on the mission statement and function, because the mission statement basically expresses the goals and intentions of the agency in serving its clientele. Include a discussion of how the mission statement is reflected in the information obtained from the background information of the agency. And what this assignment will do, again, remember we talked about the transferable skills. It gives you an opportunity to demonstrate digital fluency, because you're going to probably find this information by going online and getting that from their website. And then ethics and professional responsibility as well. So you're going to be able to need to access a website to conduct research for your agency. Mission statements reiterate the ethical and professional responsibility needed to be successful in the field. So it tells what the responsibilities are and what's expected of a person working in that agency and what the goal of the agency is to do. So other details to include are these. So that's why I said you need to make sure that you cover these things, and not in bullet point form, but in paragraph form, okay? And then let's go and take a look at the rubric. You will see that in order to do that, that your paper should be a minimum of 2 pages. So you should be able to have that information in 2 pages to elaborately provide details. Now, remember what you're going to do with this section. You're going to save this, because when you get to week 9, you're going to already have now 2 sections that you can put into your paper. And that is, so you'll do an introduction about what you're writing about in your final paper, and then starting with the contact information and the agency in a section, would I recommend with a highlighted section or a subtitle. And then you go into the next one, which is what you're doing now, and that is agency overview. And you're going to make sure you provide that agency overview and background, could be your caption, and then you put information that you do for completing this assignment when you get to week 9. So you get 25 points for that. And that's it. Make sure you have a cover page, citations in the body, references at the end. It's as simple as that. Again, it is so important that students listen to the lecture so they can get clarification. Because if a student submits the assignment that's not done properly, you're going to lose points. And you don't have to if you take time to listen to the lecture that I put together for you. It's not very long. The lecture is usually at this point are usually 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. So that's the assignments for week 4. So now let's go into my discussion about the topics themselves. All right, here we go. So we're going to talk about jail and how it operates, what bail is about, and the different things that take place. So again, this is your reading. Jail versus prison, an interview regarding jail issues today, and you need to listen very carefully to the lecture. I'll be taking the video that comes on in just a few minutes, and then I already discussed the course project, the written assignments, discussion post, and then about that. So now, jail versus prison. Now, these two terms, oftentimes, sometimes people use them interchangeably, but actually they're different. Jails are really short-term, and it is intended for individuals to be there generally while they're awaiting trial if they do not make bail, and or if they are sentenced to a misdemeanor. And the definition of a misdemeanor is a sentence that is less than 1 year. And so those are served in jails. Jails are usually in the urban area. They are located in the cities, and usually they're close to the actual main courthouse. We have that like that here in Will County, and we have that like that in Cook County as well. And I also have seen, I think it's the same thing in DuPage County as well. Those are the bigger ones within the vicinity that I'm familiar with. And so when you go to jail, you will find yourself where you go through and you're processed through booking, and then you have your fingerprinting and photos taken, all those kind of things. And then, again, you are then given the opportunity, if it's a crime that qualifies you for bond, to receive bond. Now, the purpose for bonds is to guarantee your appearance, and what allows you to be out of jail while awaiting trial. Now, there is a constitutional right to reasonable bail. There is no constitutional right to bail itself. And so if it's a severe felony, then pretty much we won't be talking about jail so much. We will talk about prison when it comes to the ultimate. But even if you're in jail awaiting trial, you could have a high bail. Traditionally, it's 10% of whatever is stated. So if it was $50,000 bail, then you'd have to post $5,000 in cash or assets. And so the judge or the magistrate that you're taken to when you are in jail will conduct a bail hearing, and sometimes people are released on what we call I bonds, the letter I, or as mentioned here, recognizance, or ROR bonds, which means released on recognizance. And what that means is that those individuals, first of all, have not committed serious offenses, and or the individuals cannot post bail, and because of that, rather than to keep a person in jail, if they're not a flight risk and that they will appear in court, then they allow them to basically get out on their own. And that happens generally with people who haven't been in the system very much, or first time, or like I said again, it's for minor offenses. So there are conditions that are sets out in terms of bail, and you have to make sure that you satisfy those requirements. Sometimes it's to wear a monitor. Sometimes you'll even find yourself under house arrest and those kind of things. So the point of the matter is that jail is a lower level. Now, I already told you and jails will be there to treat individuals with mental health conditions. They have special sections of jails and wards for people who have health issues, including mental health concerns. But there is a problem, as you see in the criminal justice system, that budget cuts and have caused problems, and in some instances now, and it's not a whole lot. I hate the fact that that is happening when it does. Is some jurisdictions have been forced to privatize some of their services, including medical and mental health, food service programs, and even the facility construction. So what they do is they bring in companies to provide these. But what I was going to tell you is that some have actually reached a point of hiring a private agency to actually run the jail. That is a very serious problem that we won't cover in this course. So because there's not a lot of financial resources, and there's overcrowding that comes as one of the issues which many of you have recognized, and then there are some programs that are there to deal with religious services and exercise equipment, law library, and educational opportunities, individuals to obtain GEDs, and so forth and so on. And if there is a need for drug and alcohol treatment, there's programs that take care of that. And then there's work release, where you released to go to work and then you come back. So those are various types of things, vocational programs as well. And so again, as I said, one of the problems that face jails today is, as I include overcrowding, there's a lot of violence as a result because people are in there tight and close. And then, like I said, even with the mental health placements, it's tight as well. And so increasing problems are common because of the ratio usually of inmates to correction officer is pretty high. And, there are inspections and other requirements that go with it for the inmates themselves. But because of the budgetary constraints, sometimes a correction officer or a jail officer is overworked in those situations. So that's it for jails. So now let's talk about prisons, and quite a bit of what I said will apply to prisons. The difference with prisons is that you will have been sentenced to a crime of at least a year and a day. And almost all prisoners today, 90% are in the state system. Some are in the federal system, but most are in the state systems that are conducted, as I said, Illinois Department of Corrections. Each state has their own different names, they call it. And predominantly male prisoners sentenced for violent offenses, and there's some racial and ethnic differences. Usually a high percentage of minorities in these facilities. There are facilities for men, and then there are separate prison facilities where women are incarcerated. And so in these prisons, as I said, many of the programs that I talked about, except they don't have work release in prison, when you start to find yourself in prison and you out, usually that's at a point when you've received parole or early release or something to serve the rest of your sentence outside of jail. So on the federal level, the FOBOP, which is the Federal Bureau of Prisons, is the standard setter for what happens in correction facilities. And in addition, as I said, to federally run prisons, they involve in the custody and care of offenders who are kept by agreements with the state and local governments. So, and then some privately operated correctional centers, which I am totally opposed to. The BOP, and they're operating in the various states of corrections, as well as DC, are concerned with the expenses, the cost, recidivism, which is a person who repeats a crime and keeps coming back, how the operations take place in the facility. You should also be aware that both in prison and in jail, there are male and female officers. There's male and female jailers, and there's male and female correction officers in both male and female prisons as well. And so these are set up in prison based upon the seriousness of the offense, all the way starting with the less serious offenses or the non-violent offenses generally that are felonious, that qualified you for a felony, where there's maximum security. And in the maximum security facility, there's usually, it's like being in a dorm, and individuals are sometimes allowed to attend school and work in those facilities themselves. So there are usually educational opportunities inside there. In the medium security is where you run into the situation which oftentimes you'll see on television or in movies, the double bunked, with the double fence where guards are in towers, and there is controlled access, and also there are some educational opportunities. But we get to the point there where you're talking about the guards with the weapons and stuff like that. The minimum security facilities oftentimes are, sometimes people call them resorts, but they're really not, where there's they operate on trust, a lot of them, and people don't try to run or escape from there. Maximum security is when you start to move into the old prisons, as we call them, with the stone walls, where you have the cell observation, the toilet and the sink are all right there in the cell, and you've seen that. There's a double fence and watchtowers with armed guards, restrict movement within the cell block or the pod, and they maintain strict control in those facilities. Remember, the more severe the offense, the more likely that you will end up in a facility that fits within it. So if it's a serious offense or you repeat offender, then you might go from minimum to medium to maximum the next time you come. And then supermax, where it's almost like some people have said it's inhumane, but you spend most of your time locked up, and there's video cameras, cement walls, and not any communication with each other, and there's security housing units. So it's like almost like being segregated from other individuals. So there are many designs that prisons are, from radio to telephone pole to courtyard campuses, and all those different things. But it depends on the classification level from minimum to supermax. In the prison, the warden is responsible for running the prison. And then there's a bunch of associate wardens who handle the management services and other services that are provided at the prison. And I know that, for example, one of my former students, she was a lieutenant at Stateville, which is one of our Illinois Department of Correction facilities, which is close by, and it's a male-populated facility. She actually would run the facility sometime when the warden wasn't around. She then moved up to major. Major is the next position, where you're the point person, and then oftentimes when the warden is not there, you will take over. And so the warden, though, is the one who is the overseer for the facility and can be named oftentimes in civil suits and all kinds of issues. And so they're responsible for making sure how staff develops, dealing with the spending to operate it so that it's not operated with losing money. And so usually, as it says, today strive for programming and staff development in an attempt to prevent problems. And so that's the jails versus prison for today. So now I want to go and provide you with an interview by a gentleman by the name of Frank, who's an assistant jail administrator, and listen to what he says about jails today and see how it operates, and you get some ideas about it. Now, there are some things in here that you will hear, like the education requirements. You'll see, too, how they're moving higher in terms of classification to hiring individuals with more education because they're trying to cut down on the litigation that has taken place. And you're going to also hear the requirements that deal with communication, and also you're going to recognize too that it is important that you are firm and fair and consistent with inmates. You don't try to do favors and things like that that could get you in trouble, and you can end up compromising your position. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to take my video, and I'm going to take my video. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, okay. My video is gone. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. Okay, and then I want to make sure that you can hear me. Okay, so you can. So I'm going to take off my headset, otherwise you won't.
About your background and your position here in Sherburne County.
Sure. Well, I worked at the Sherburne County Jail for the past 18 years. Over the past 18 years, I've held the capacity of a corrections officer, of a jail sergeant, the jail captain, and currently I'm the assistant jail administrator. Before that, I worked for Cup Foods. I was assistant produce manager. I was going to St. Cloud State University when I was the assistant produce manager. And then I had an opportunity to apply for Sherburne County, which I did, and I was accepted. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps Reserve. I was a veteran for the first Gulf War, which I learned a lot of things. It was an experience that I'll never forget. Gained a lot of experience out of it. For that, I was at St. Cloud State University. So I went from St. Cloud State University. I joined the Marine Corps Reserve. I didn't graduate at that point, and ended up getting activated for the Gulf War. And when the Gulf War was done, came back and went back to school and worked at Cup.
Okay. Can you tell us about the setup of your jail and the types of inmates you serve?
Yes, our jail is actually, it's kind of a unique jail. We hold federal inmates, so we have a contract with the U.S. Marshal Service and Immigration to hold federal inmates. Most of the inmates that we have are federal inmates. On any given day, we have about 80 to 100 county inmates. The rest of our inmate population are federal. We have pushed over 600 inmates. A couple years ago, we were pushing that every day. Recently, it's dropped down to about 400 in a given day. Inside the jail, its design is unique as well. There's 3 different kind of styles of the layout of the facility. We have linear style, we have modular remote, and we have direct supervision.
What do those things mean?
The linear style jail is basically a day room that has cells attached to the day room. There's not a corrections officer that's in the unit, that's watching the unit all the time. The corrections officers make rounds. So they have to make rounds every 15 to 30 minutes going through and just making sure that things are okay. It's a difficult area to control because you're not observant on what's going on in there. So it makes it more difficult. What we've done with that area is made it into a special management area. So this is where we have our lockdown inmates. So if they go into disciplinary sanctions, they're locked down 23 hours a day. They have 1 hour out where they can go into the day room. And once they have that hour out, they can use the phone, they can shower, read the paper. So that's basically what they're able to do during that hour. We only have or allow one person out at a time. So there's no contact between the inmates back there in our disciplinary stay. So when I first started, that was our jail, linear style jail. And we would end up going to situations. We were usually putting situations out all the time, putting fires out, because you didn't know what was going on all the time. The positive remote is it's also in our special management area, but it's an area where we keep like vulnerable adults, people that are classified at a lower level, people that have crimes that we want to pull away from the regular population, such as sex crimes. Those crimes typically aren't very well thought of by the general population, and those people can be subject to manipulation, subject to some extortion, and they're subject to being able to be assaulted in the facility. So we want to pull those people out, keep them safe, and we have a workstation that's in a hallway that has glass that overlooks that area, and that's the positive remote. It's a little bit better than the linear supervision for watching. So you've got sightline, so you're able to see inmates, throughout the day, but you don't really hear what's going on in there. But it works well for what we have. And we have direct supervision. Direct supervision is our general population, and in that area we have corrections officers in with the inmates throughout the entire day. And that works real well because not only do you see the inmates all the time, but you're walking, you're talking, and you get a lot of information. You get to hear what's going on inside the unit. And you'll hear corrections officers that have been around, you feel what's going on in the unit. So you get to know the vibe that's going on inside that housing.
Okay. You touched on this, but could you talk more about administrative issues in the jail?
Sure. Our administrative duties are to make sure that the facility is run according to state law, constitutional law, following our policies and procedures. So we, in administration, we write the policy and procedures for the staff to follow, and we make sure that the staff are following them. We take care of the hiring, the staff discipline. We make sure that all the needs of the facility are met. We have female inmates in custody. We have federal inmates in custody. We have immigration inmates in custody. And we have our county inmates in custody. And we just make sure that the facility is being run in the right direction.
Okay. What are some issues facing jails today?
One of the biggest issues that we have, and it's different from when I first started 18 years ago, is mental illness in corrections. The mental illness facilities that we had back, when I first started 18 years ago, have been shut down, and there's not a lot of options to be able to send who are in need of controlling their mental illness through medication and doctors. They're not so they are being kept in the jails. We have probably 1/3 of our population on psychotropic medication. So that's probably one of the biggest issues that we face. That is a change from when I first started.
You mentioned your background. Can you tell us what are the minimum qualifications to be a correctional officer?
Sure. The minimum qualifications is a valid driver's license. You have to be a high school graduate, and that's your basic minimum qualifications. Now, we look, when we go through the interview process, and we're looking for people that are well-rounded, people that are great communicators, and we look for people that have had 3-year degrees, 4-year degrees. So that is more appealing when you're going through the interview process. And you're more likely to get a job with a 2-year or 4-year degree.
Okay. Do you have any advice for today's students?
You know, one of the things that we push in corrections is firm, fair, and consistent. So if you get into this business, it's very important for you to be firm on the rules, consistent with the rules, and you have to be fair with the rules. You can't be allowing one individual to do something that you're not allowing another individual to do. Going through the interview process, it's very important to do a little research on what you're getting into. So when you're going through the interview process, you're able to, intelligently answer the questions that are being asked. Communication is probably the biggest thing that we look for, a good communicator, someone who's afraid of being able to talk to people and give them bad information on occasion, and but being able to deliver that information in a way that isn't going to jeopardize any kind of security issues. So.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oops. Okay. I'm back. I'm back. Okay, let me get this back to the video. Sorry about that. Okay, so as you can see, you learned a lot from that information there. So you understand the things that I said there. And then on your own, you can do this, checking the maximum security prison itself. So that's about all I have for today. If you have any questions, you know what to do to reach out to me. Have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you in 2 weeks with our next lecture.